Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio. Brought to you by OnPay. Built in Atlanta, OnPay is the top-rated payroll and HR software anywhere. Get 1 month free at onpay.com. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Atlanta Business Radio, and this is going to be a good one. But before we get started, it's important to recognize our sponsor, OnPay. Without them, we could not be sharing these stories. Today on Atlanta Business Radio, we have Jason Rhoades with Toolbox No. 9. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, thank you for having me, Lee.
I'm excited to learn about what you're up to. Tell us about Toolbox No. 9. How you serving folks?
Right. Well, we are what we call a user experience design and development agency, and our business is primarily centered around making, say, websites and applications easier or better to use, and we will do the design and the development efforts. So if you're not in the technology field, what we do is make things prettier, nicer, faster, better, more productive. And then we often collaborate with other technology companies or teams that handle a lot of the back end of the work. So we're very what we call client facing, the pretty face of, say, a mobile app or a web-based application.
So now in today's world, is the client hiring you directly, or are you getting kind of hired through an agency or another kind of third party?
Oh, that's a really good question. It is a mixture of both. Typically, we are working directly with the client, I would say a majority of the time. And normally what prompts that is that they have a really capable internal technology team or marketing team, but they lack some of the capabilities and skill sets that my company specializes in.
And then are you typically taking a client that has already something and they're like leveling up, or they had a problem and they're fixing it? Or is it sometimes you're starting from a blank sheet of paper and then you're building the initial kind of app or the initial website?
Yeah, another great question. It is both. I would say majority of what we do, by the time you come to us, the majority of the time you already have an application and you really understand the value of enhancing the user experience and you're willing to put an investment into it. So normally there's kind of I always say applications, there's a straw, stick, and brick house. And the straw house is generally a little flimsy, a little clunky, a little ugly, but it's a necessary step. And then when you're ready to move into, say, a stick or brick or more permanent home, you would enlist the help of a company like mine to help you get there and help you build something that's sustainable, that can help you grow as a company and really kind of showcase your capabilities, which is often the need. When the front end doesn't match in the back end, there's a big disconnect for the customer.
But you're saying that it's okay to start with kind of the straw house because you need to have some sort of a minimum viable product that gives the customer an idea of this is kind of what we'd like to do. And then from there, if you get some traction, then you can start building it out. And that's where your team would come in to really kind of make it sing.
Yeah. I mean, it really kind of comes down to business objectives. And it is very easy to launch into that technology making a lot of assumptions. And when you make a lot of assumptions, you can go down paths that are very expensive, time and money and opportunity cost if it's not directed properly. And it is very, very difficult to know what users actually want if you're starting from scratch. So I think that's maybe a missing component of that Three Little Pigs story is people just assume if you hear that story that third pig got it right, should have started with the brick house. But I'd like to change that story in that I don't think the brick house would have been possible without going through the straw and stick house as well. So when we talk to startups or internal projects that might be more greenfield, even for very large companies, I think it's a very healthy step to start with that straw house, those prototypes, really understand the true value of the products you're creating. And then you can start really building in more firepower, because the last thing you want to do is over-engineer something that nobody wants.
And that's kind of a trap, right? Because a lot of times the layperson or consumer sees the finished product and thinks they just jumped to that point, and they don't realize the journey they were on to finally get to that point.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of discipline, right? It can definitely be a trap. You can definitely go down, like I said, very, very time-consuming and expensive pathways, just because you started off in a slightly off-kilter direction. And you can just imagine visually, if you had an angle and you were only 3% off, well, extend that angle over years or time or distance, and the delta can get very, very large between where you should be going and where you are currently headed. So starting off small, approaching things with discipline almost always pays off in the long run. But in the end of the day, people get excited about a direction. They want to invest in it. So we often see that we are retrofitting a lot of applications that might have been a little slightly misguided. And now it's time to get them into that stick and brick house.
Yeah, I think a case that illustrates that is Quibi kind of maybe versus TikTok, where you got a Quibi where they had a bunch of, smart entertainment people that thought they knew stuff, and then they were going to make a platform that everybody's going to love because they're going to just fill it with this great professional content. And TikTok said, we're going to go with just regular people and then build it from regular people up. And, the results are the results.
Yeah, and you could probably list every successful startup that became a unicorn, and I'm going to guess they all started solving one problem very, very well, and then they layered on to that solution. And so it's hard to identify what that one problem is and what the most elegant solution is. So that's really where the magic is in terms of these companies. So if you're creating your own software, there's definitely a lot of models, I should say, that have proven more successful than others. But sometimes, you come in and there's heavy requirements. If you're working on enterprise business software, it's never going to be as cute or as small or as contained as something like TikTok. You have a lot of business logic that needs to be from the get-go. So then it's a question of okay, well, what's the most intelligent way to approach a multifaceted B2B SaaS product? Because you're never going to have the opportunity to do the Instagram of SaaS B2B, right? Or maybe there is. Maybe that's what we'll see in the future.
Who knows? That could be next year's big project.
Right.
And now,
I do think there is a growing convergence. That's an oxymoron. There is a convergence coming between B2C and B2B. And I think everybody would agree that their expectations for their software, how their work lives is very much merging with their personal lives. And I don't think anybody would disagree that they're, especially in this world of quarantine and Zoom, that how we operate in businesses is very similar to how we're interacting with friends and family right now. So I think that convergence will continue. So I think businesses planning for that, I think is a worthwhile endeavor to think, what is it that we value in our personal lives, and can we expect that customers are going to value that in our business lives in the near future?
So now when you're developing either a website or an app, how do you kind of, what are some of the boxes that must be checked in order for you to feel like, okay, this is going to kind of be as good as it can be at this stage of in its life cycle? How do we add some, kind of viral component that makes it easy to share? Or how do we make it, do the thing, it gets the outcome that the customer desires?
Yeah. All right. Well, I think if you're familiar with the agile process, which gets mixed reviews, even through people who adhere to it, it is more of an iterative step-by-step to build technology. And there in terms of the check boxes, I think the process of developing websites and applications is as important as the market fit or the assumption of market fit. And I think you have to go in with a healthy bit of skepticism about how valuable this product is. And the only way to assess value is have people use it. And the only way to get people to use it is start building it. So I guess in terms of my checkboxes, if I'm working with a new company, you learn pretty quickly what their level of discipline is and what their level of assumptions are. And you see those red flags pretty early on. And hands down, every time we start with a new client and they're a little bit over aggressive about all their assumptions, you just know that there's going to need to be some course correction once they get past this first phase to kind of retrofit or re-engineer to make it more desirable. So I can't answer that specifically, but I can say, to me, process is as important as, say, the research going into and what those assumptions are based on, if that makes sense without going into too much detail.
Well, when you're talking to a new client and they say, like, what is the thing they're asking for? Are they saying, I want this to do A, B, and C, or I want the customer to get A, B, and C? Like, what is the typical outcome they desire? And how much are they coming to you with kind of a list of things that they think are must-haves, but for you, you might kind of go, well, I don't know, that doesn't sound like a must-have to me, you know?
Right. No, you're hitting the nail on the head. I would say hands down, almost everybody comes to, every buyer that uses a services company like ours inevitably comes with like a handful of features they want. So we're quite used to that. And then part of our job is taking those requirements, but bringing it back out high level and going into an ideation process so that we can actually really rethink what their desired objectives are, but from a different viewpoint. And that viewpoint is the user, the customer. So what our team is trained to do from a design perspective is say, okay, great, we've got your requirements. That's great. Now let us walk you through this experience from the customer's eyes. And this is like a combination of like virtual whiteboarding and graphic design and what we call user experience and user interface design. And the goal is to abstract those features and functionality and create a more empathetic, how should I say, an empathetic interface that really, really looks at that customer. And it's not until we kind of force our clients to walk in their customer's shoes where they get away from this concept of features and functionality into like solving problems for the customer. And once we've done that, I'm not saying we throw away those features and functionality requests, but we can refit them into this experience in a way that's just much more pleasing or delightful or efficient. So people will come to us with very, very specific requirements, and it's our job to hear those requirements, but repackage them into something that we know from experience is going to be a better user experience.
And that's because this is what you do. I mean, your client isn't an expert like you are.
Well, there's certainly a subject matter expert. So what I really like about our job is that we get exposed, I imagine like you, to a lot of different businesses, a lot of different ways that the world is constructed. And we need to extract that subject matter expertise as rapidly as possible. So they for sure know what's best for their customer. They just don't know how to package it. And I guess when I was talking earlier about like customer demands, like the B2C and B2B, this convergence, well, what we're seeing now is there's just best practices. And to use an analogy, like houses aren't that different anymore, right? They all have front doors. Most have a back porch. Some have an upstairs and a downstairs or a basement. But if you go into a house, any house, no matter how large or how small, as a human being, hands down, you'll be able to navigate it, unless it's the what is the Westinghouse, or the one in California that was constructed for ghosts. There's very few houses that I'm saying is that you would not be able to navigate. And applications and websites are more adhering to those same foundational best practices. So that's the knowledge that we've acquired over 15 years, is like, this is either where the trends are going or where they already are. So you're like, cool. So now we can assume customers want this 50%. This is just their set of expectations right now. So then the next set of 50% of requirements is how do we get the subject matter expertise or the low-level feature requirements into these houses. So that's the best analogy I could use in terms of how we marry our expertise with our customers' expertise.
Now, what is the, are you kind of industry agnostic? Do you work, like you're mentioning this convergence of B2C and B2B, or you work on both of those groups? Like, what's kind of the sweet spot for you for an ideal customer?
Right. So I think we are very much a product of Atlanta. We're pretty agnostic when it comes to B2C to B2B, but a majority of Atlanta businesses that are B2B. And we also, in terms of the verticals that seem to dominate at least our technology world, like Atlanta is huge for healthcare. It's an amazing industry here. And we work everywhere from like public health with organizations like the CDC Foundation to working with some of the biggest names in healthcare, pharma. So Atlanta's got this great energy around healthcare. So a lot of our work is geared towards that. There's also a lot of cybersecurity here, a lot of fintech, and a little bit of entertainment with, say, like, Turner Cartoon Network. So we didn't start our company with the intention of focusing on verticals, but I think the larger we get, the more we slide into the opportunities that are dominant here in Atlanta. But I would say what we learned from fintech applies to healthcare and vice versa. It's very transportable. And the same thing with the B2B to B2C. So it's really helped us provide more value to new verticals, just knowing, once again, that customer demands in terms of user interfaces, like it's just getting so much more aligned. And then, once again, the clients, they're the subject matter expert. We need their content, their technology to be translated into these user interfaces. So it's very much a collaborative effort.
Now, when you work with a client, is it typical that they start kind of small and they have you do a project and then it expands? Like once you get in there, then you start getting work maybe in other departments or in other parts of the business?
Yeah, it varies. I think for the most part, that's probably a recommended path, right? You need to test the waters on both sides to make sure we're a good partner fit, and that we are going to sync well with their internal systems and processes and help them achieve their goals. But it is not uncommon where we start out with a client that has a very aspirational set of goals, and they need a very large effort from the outset. And then, of course, our job is in that kind of lift off and strategy process to win their trust, to create a strategy that we are very confident will be successful for them. So before they invest quite a bit of money and time, that everybody's moving forward with shared expectations and confidence in the process. So, but technology moves very quickly. And so sometimes we're brought in for a very small project and it rapidly grows. And when I say rapidly, it could be within 4 to 6 weeks, because we've at least got a foothold in towards how we can provide value to them.
Now, can you share maybe an example of a client you were working with? You don't have to name their name, but maybe they had a project that was, A, and it turned into a finished product that was Z, that maybe kind of grew and evolved into something that exceeded their expectations?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about marketing websites. So websites can vary dramatically in size and scope, as shouldn't be a surprise to anybody listening to this. But so the smallest version is what we might call like a landing page. It might even be just a one-page website that's geared to promote a specific product. So we have a healthcare client that needed to kind of accelerate their ability to market a specific product. They needed it delivered quite quickly because they were developing out marketing and advertising campaigns, and their corporate website was not telling the story efficiently. So that might be an example where like the brick house is insufficient because it's engineered in a different way that did not meet the marketing needs. So like the storytelling, the visualization, maybe even the responsiveness when it comes to mobile, there were just a lot of weak points in this brick house. So they essentially needed a straw house built very rapidly within a few weeks to help market this product for this push. Well, that relationship's grown over 4 or 5 years. We've essentially driven the efforts to take over 3 of the brick houses of a family of healthcare products, and it's been a fantastic relationship. And it really started with a quick few-week turnaround, little straw house, and it eventually became 3 separate brick houses. So it's a relationship that was kind of formed on kind of meeting goals, meeting their expectations, creating really good relationships, like personal relationships. And of course, we take pride in the quality of our work. So I suspect we wouldn't have been able to grow that relationship had they not liked what we were delivering for them. So most of our relationships last a pretty long time. And since we've been around 15 years, we even have some clients that are over 10 years have been working with us in that capacity.
Good stuff. Well, Jason, if somebody wanted to learn more, have more substantive conversation with you or somebody on your team, what's the website or best coordinates to get a hold of you?
Yeah, certainly if you're interested in how user experience can accelerate your website or your application, I always love to talk about it. And just like conversations like this, it doesn't even have to be a business pitch. It's safe to say obsessed with the subject. So I always love sharing what we've learned. We also like sharing what we've learned for people who will never be a client, but could value from this expertise, like certain nonprofits that may not have the budget, but certainly we like to share those values with the world. So if this is of interest to you, you can go to our website where you'll find our contact information. It's toolbox9.com. That's toolbox with the number 9. Or short, also just tb9.com, the fastest way to get to it.
Good stuff. Well, thank you again for sharing your story, and congratulations on all the success.
Hey, this has been a lot of fun. Well, I definitely really appreciate you taking the time and interest in what we do.
All right. This is Lee Cantor. We will see you all next time on Atlanta Business Radio. And remember, this work would not be possible without the support of our sponsor, OnPay. Please support them so we can continue to share these important stories.
Today's episode of Atlanta Business Radio is brought to you by OnPay. Built in Atlanta, OnPay is the top-rated payroll and HR software anywhere. Get 1 month free at onpay.com.